thank you everyone for coming to tonight's debate. Thank you
Wait,
for
dude,
bearing
Max
with.
is waving at me. We should go.
Well, thank you for bearing with us for the delay. And the motion before the House today is this House believes global organizations and international organizations have failed to meet today's challenges. It's the last debate of term. Thank you so much for coming through exams, and we hope you have a great Me Week coming towards you as well. Before we start the debate tonight, I'm not going to be chairing it. We're going to have a committee handover today. So without further ado, I'd like to state that our outgoing social events officer, Emma Jing, will be replaced by Dan McKinnon for Michaelmas 2819.
Thank you, everyone who made a floor speech. We'll now move to our second speaker on side proposition. Diego Uria is a former president of the United Nations Security Council and the former Venezuelan permanent representative to the United Nations. Thank you.
Congratulations, Madam President. You know, I cannot resist temptation, coming from a country which is in the hands of a criminal gang, Venezuela, to admire and envy how swift you were in removing the previous government of the society. All my admiration for that, and envy. I've chosen also the United Nations because I believe that the UN is a premier institution, with the exception of the International Court of Justice, which I believe has its own niche in the world. And I will raise a couple of questions. The first one would be, is the United Nations legacy only ideas and concepts? And the second question I will raise would be, have these ideas and concepts in any way strengthened the organization? On the first question, I will quote, there's a volume of 14 books called the UN Ideas for a Better World, written by this gentleman here to my left, Sir Richard Joly, which is a collection of the ideas and concepts of the United Nations. And I would recommend to you as an admirable work, and I could not agree more with that. My second question is, has those concepts and ideas have led to the United Nations to become more effective, to meet today's challenges? And that I will not be in the affirmative. And I will explain why from the point of view of a small country like mine, but looking after having had hands-on experience will be the premier institution in the world in charge of peace, security, and stability, which is the United Nations Security Council. I, like many of you, I came to the United Nations believing that the Charter of the United Nations says, for example, that the permanent members must give priority to their international responsibilities. And that's why we give them a privileged position to be permanent and to have the power of veto. Now, what have they done with that is that I would like to talk to you. I sat for 2 years as a non-permanent member of my country, and coming into direct contact and contrast with some of the points raised and the behavior of the major countries in the Security Council. I must say, they came out very disappointed, fundamentally, in two issues that to me were very important for the world. One was Rwanda. The second was Bosnia. During the Bosnian crisis, I led the first United Nations mission to a theater of war. And you say, why the United Nations never before sent a Security Council mission to the ground? And I tell you why. Because they don't want you to know directly what's going on. Information is power, and the big countries keep that information what is important to them. And the General Secretariat usually cooperates in that endeavor. I landed leading this mission in Srebrenica, first in Sarajevo, and not 5 minutes has passed by when I noticed that we have been led to different believing of what's going on. We were actually being lied for a long time. So much so, I will go a little bit ahead, like Churchill would say, I will interrupt myself, and that I went as a witness in the International Criminal Court for former Yugoslavia as a witness against Milosevic, and the prosecutor shows me a letter from Madame Ogata, who was in charge of humanitarian department at the United Nations, telling Boutros Ghali that the major catastrophe was going to take place in the area of Srebrenica, Mostar, and other cities. And I saw that 11 years afterwards, and I was a member of the Security Council. So that really, I raised the issue, and I'm writing a book called A Room Without a View, and I will explain to you why do I call it a room without a view. The United Nations have two rooms. One is a formal room that you see the horseshoe one, and another one is half of this size, which is called the informal consultation. Nothing informal there. That's a real Security Council. And it has a long window that overlooks the East River, but the curtains are always drawn. And I said, why? Because they don't want to know what's really going outside. And they want to keep the information close to them. I have said, and not in joke, last year we had an evaluation of the Srebrenica catastrophe in The Hague, and I said, I never belonged to a least informed body in my life than the United Nations Security Council. And I said, I'm not joking, but it is not out of ignorance. It is a voluntary policy to keep people with limited information. And in this process, I said in Srebrenica, I had the ambassador of Russia with me, France, Pakistan, Hungary, and New Zealand. And I said, a slow motion genocide is taking place here. I went back to the Security Council, presented my report, and someone said, well, Diego, have never seen a war. This is not going to happen. And a year and a half now, next month in July, will be another anniversary where they massacred 8,000 people in 48 hours. After this continent, the European of Maastricht have said, never again. This took place again in the eyes of the world. And this was videotaped, it was in colors, everybody knew about it. The international complicity into this was really damning to us. I have to remember that in my last intervention in the Security Council, I was telling the permanent members, you are loading, you don't have enough shoulders to keep up on yours the responsibility to not let the Muslims to defend themselves. Because we deny them, the Charter says, Article 51, the right of self-defense. We even prohibited them because actually some of the European countries, and I would say fundamentally France and the UK, wanted, that they thought that the Serbs were going to eliminate the Muslims. And one ambassador told me, we didn't want Bosnia to become the tar baby of Europe. That's when I realized how serious the situation was in the Security Council, that they were willing to actually allow the disappearance because they thought that the Bosnian Muslims were going to play dead and roll and go away. They didn't, and they resisted. And now it came to an agreement called the Dayton Agreement, which is the officialization of apartheid in the middle of Europe. 2 hours away from here, you go to Sarajevo, you enter a school, they have 3 doors, for the Croats, for the Serbs, and for the Muslims. And who did that? The United Nations, together with the big powers. So that's not what the Charter of the United Nations says. That's not the United Nations that I have in my mind. The United Nations is a formidable organization, full of young people like you, extraordinary people, I would say. What happened is it's being captured by the 3 most important members of the community. And that has actually blamed many things that happened. Instead of blaming the United States or the United Kingdom or Russia or China, we tend to blame the United Nations because that's a big name. And it is, I would say, very unfair. Based, on what I'm telling you, which is not something that I read about, but something that I've seen in Rwanda and Somalia and Cambodia and Bosnia, I tell you that what the House believes today, I believe we should support it and send a strong message to the international community. Thank you.